and was a participant in founding, to develop sources of electrons for such industrial purposes.
I'm glad you brought up the question of high voltage engineering. I wanted to ask you about that and roughly when it got started and your connections with it. Your connections from the very outset have been very intimate indeed.
They have been quite intimate. Perhaps high voltage was a dream of mine during the war when I was elsewhere. But it became an actuality after the war. It began operating in 1947 because there awaited me at MIT when I returned to this requests from several hospitals, one in England, the Sheffield Radio Center for Cancer Therapy in Sheffield, England,
right,
for assistance in building a 2 million volt X-ray source. It was not feasible for MIT to help all the people who wanted to build one. So first I sought to find a company that was willing to do this based on our experience with the American oncologic machine. And when no company, among quite a few, was interested because of their preoccupation with their own reorientation to post-war affairs, Dr. Van de Graaff and I and Dennis Robinson, an Englishman, who had been a professor of electrical engineering at the University of Birmingham for a year after the war, united to form the High Voltage Engineering Corporation, first in Cambridge and now in Burlington, Massachusetts.
I wanted very much to get that in. And this leads directly into one other of your areas of intense concern, and this is the pushing of your high voltage, high energy generators up into the multi-million volt range, particularly for research on nuclear structure. And very briefly, I have 3 photographs here, remembering the one that we saw, the 1 or 2 million volt set, which was roughly the same height as you. Let's take a quick look at these 2 or 3 photographs here without much discussion.
This sketch shows the biggest of the large family of accelerators that high voltage engineering produced. This was about 1967 and is called an Emperor tandem. There are about a dozen of these around the world at principal nuclear laboratories. The tandem accelerator starts with a positive ion source at this end, accelerates the ions to a high voltage negative terminal, strips the electrons, or some of them, off of the positive, starts with a negative ion, off the positive terminal, and then off the negative ion and makes it a positive ion, and then accelerates it away from this high voltage negative terminal back to ground as a twice accelerated positive ion. In the case of heavy particles, you can strip more than 1 electron off. In fact, this system produced the Emperor tandem produced particles with total energies up to 200 million electron volts on accelerating uranium.
Now, I think that picture shows a man or a figure somewhere
this
in
picture shows the next stage called the transuranic accelerator, the TU accelerator. This was only recently reduced to commercial practice, but it was built about 1968 or so. The diameter of this steel tank was 25 feet, and it was 86 feet long. This lady who's cleaning up the bottom was put in there for dramatic effect to illustrate the size. This tank is built for 300 pounds per square inch pressure.
Wow.
And to operate in sulfur hexafluoride gas. And this picture shows the same tank with the Van de Graaff tandem accelerator column in there. It's stretched in there between one end of the tank and the other, 86 feet apart, with the insulated terminal in the middle.
So that the span between the supports is 40-some feet?
Between supports is 86 feet. It's
86 feet?
Compressed from both ends, but it has enough diameter that it makes a stiff, rigid column. But the insulating length on each side is about 30 feet.
Yeah. Huh.
And the terminal length, which you can't see in this picture, is about 10 or 12 feet long, about 8 feet in diameter.
Oh, absolutely remarkable. There's one other thing that we have a minute or two that I'd like to just have you bring in. This has to do with electron injection into materials and some of the interesting applications. That's a spectacular picture. Let's take a look at it.
This is a beautiful drainage pattern, but it actually represents the drainage pattern produced in a block of clear lucite after you have injected through its broad face a number of high-energy electrons, 3 millivolt electrons. Finally, these build an intense negative cloud within the volume, and if you produce a defect on the bottom edge of it, they will all discharge in a lightning flash. And you can do this outside after injection and leave this permanent destructive pattern in the lucite. It reminds one of the great drainage systems of nature, the drainage geological patterns you see when you look down on New Mexico and so forth,
right,
or the Venus patterns in a leaf.
Now, what are some of the practical applications of this? This is a spectacular experiment.
We were interested in dielectrics, and you can produce intense electric fields in this electrodeless method of charging an insulator, but it doesn't really have many practical applications that we have found as well. It's sort of something of great elegance that reminds us of the remarkable intricacy of nature and her ability to solve a complex problem like producing such a discharge pattern in a microsecond. But we do not really have commercial applications other than the aesthetic and artistic ones, which are derived from looking at figures of that kind.
Well, we'll just wait a little. They'll come. I'm sure of that.
And I'm going to took screenshots of some of the stuff that I thought was interesting. So here we go. Tesla makes the unseen a visible, terrible manifestation in nature. He generates currents that would not disturb a fly on your sleeping babe, yet they are as devastating as a cyclone. He gives the faintest whispering current force, a force that disintegrates armor plate as quickly as you melt sugar with water. In a way, he brings certainty out of chaos. He makes substance from nothing, that which you can neither see, taste, hear, nor smell. He lashes into a storm of fury, and you hear this nothing roar as thunder like Niagara. It suggests to the contemplative mind that period when this great rolling globe of ours was without form and void.
Nikola Tesla, speaking of the League of Nations, it seems he's alluding to, he says here, the proposed league is not a remedy, but on the contrary, in the opinion of a number of competent men, may bring about results just the opposite. It is particularly regrettable that a punitive policy was adopted in framing the terms of peace, because a few years hence it will be possible for nations to fight without armies, ships, or guns, by weapons far more terrible, to the destructive action and range of which there is virtually no limit. Any city at a distance whatsoever from the enemy can be destroyed by him, and no power on earth can stop him from doing so. If we want to avert an impending calamity and a state of things which may transform the globe into an inferno, we should push the development of flying machines and wireless transmission of energy without an instant's delay, and with all the power and resources of the nation. It seems that Nikola Tesla, being an innovator of this technology, I mean, he spoke much of not only the use of free energy in the ether, but the use for human production. He also spoke of the use of it for human destruction, that we could use weapons that destroy our society, and he seemed to have a suspicion that they were already developing this. And his essential premise here in his book is, after reading it, I feel he wants people to use this energy for the greater good of mankind and not for our destruction. It
sounds far-fetched, but it explains all of the observed data. And remember, classified military technology is decades ahead of what we see in the commercial world.
Are you kidding me? I mean, is this some kind of incredible joke that people are so stupid they fall for this? When in hell are all you people going to wake up? Do you know how much money the CIA and the National Security Agency and the FBI has at its disposal each year? Do you know how many agents they have that they can devote to this? Do you realize the technology that they have to be able to eavesdrop on every single conversation in the world? You have no idea, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to tell you right now that whatever you perceive to be the state-of-the-art of technology, any technology in the civilian sector, in the secret, ladies and gentlemen, they are at least, very bare minimum, 50 to 100 years ahead, beyond what you can even imagine.